mentioned that, and I said something like, well, hopefully it's not so bad over Zoom, and one of them was kind enough to text and say, nope, can't hear a thing. So it's amazing. The engineers behind these noise filters are geniuses. And I guess it's also a way to find out whether you're noise or not. If you get through on Zoom, you're not noise, and if you don't get through, it turns out you're noise. So anyway, continuing our explorations of Dogen, founding teacher of this school of Zen. I am, thank you for asking. So all that unnecessary stuff got recorded too. From the 1200s. And he's a little hard to understand, and tonight I have a few guest teachers, courtesy of Lion's Roar magazine. But at least I know a few of them. So this is like a little 4-part article that was put together. It's a short little piece from 4 different teachers, each about a theme in Dogen's teachings. And the 4 sections are being time, everything is this moment, and practicing together is training in compassion, and practice is being the Buddha you are, and being awakened by all phenomena. So according to some editor at Lion's Roar magazine, it seems pretty much good. These are 4 aspects of Dogen's teachings. Being time, training in community as compassion, being the Buddha you are, and being awakened by everything. So here's what they had to say. First part's by Shinshu Roberts, probably an excerpt from her book. Awakened practice can only happen in this moment. Quoting Dogen, although the Dharma might seem as if it's somewhere else far away, it is the time right now. Understanding how this comes about is Dogen's primary teaching throughout Shobogenzo, his collection. To understand that everything is simultaneously manifesting, he explains, both at this moment and all moments that together make up the world's functioning, everything is simultaneously arising. This is the essential nature of Buddhist practice. A particular being time being, or Dharma position, it's sometimes called, I always found that expression weird, is experienced like a hologram that includes all the time and all the being as one event that cannot be separated. And the awakened response to this reality is integrating yourself with every moment, intimately experiencing your life with self and others. While Dogen's teaching about being time and time being is complex, it is always about the activity of your life as it unfolds. Here's an example from our human experience. Imagine you're attending a meeting with a difficult coworker. Am I speaking loud enough? Can you hear okay? Okay, I'll try to keep my voice up. So you're going to a meeting with a difficult coworker. You enter the meeting with 360 degrees of possible action points of exit from each moment. Will your response be dictated by past ill will, or will you be open, listening, and responsive? As you enter this present moment circle, there is the past behind you, she puts behind in quotes, of all your previous experiences with your coworkers. Those are real enough, yet this moment isn't defined by the past. And it isn't defined by your future agenda. And it isn't defined by how you wish it was. Since the moment itself is actually already liberated, you have the possibility to respond without attachment, without aversion. This freedom is the independent aspect of a being time, a time being, freed from past karma and future desire. Liberation only happens in response to this present moment. So, now we know meanings at work are when we're going to awaken. Not hanging around down here. But if you're caught by past experience and expectations of the future, your exit from each moment is narrow and unskillful, most likely. You check out, of the moment. A big part of our practice then is being aware of when we are caught, when we're about to check out, and changing course. Only we can fully engage without being caught by the snares of our desire. Then we can respond to each encounter with a liberated mind. That's why it's important to stay awake and integrate ourselves with what's actually happening. Not be lost in the wish that something else would happen or the fear that something will happen. Dogen's teaching on the unity of time being of reality is vast. His essay, Uji, discusses the many aspects of this Dharma positioning. Its independence, its codependent arising, its eternal presencing, its universality, and its flexibility is a mandala, reflecting and manifesting every moment's intimate response. That's a great sentence she wrote. Let's hear that again. His essay, Uji, discusses the various aspects of this Dharma position, meaning everything, Its independence, its codependent arising, its eternal presencing, universality and flexibility as a mandala manifesting as this moment's intimate response. So in the meeting with a difficult coworker, this is also an opportunity for intimate response. The essence of being time's expression is compassion, wisdom, and skillful action. Dogen's teaching on being time is inseparably is not a philosophical treatise on time's relationship to being, is a primer on alleviating the suffering of self and other. So that's pretty good. And so Shinchu actually wrote a big long book on this particular essay of Dogen. So it's pretty cool that she can boil it down to a page. So that's being time, and time is being, and it's only this, Second section is by Chimyo Simone Atkinson, who I actually haven't met, but I've admired her from afar. She's an African-American woman priest. And her little parts is that practicing together is training in compassion. So she opens by a quote from Dogen's Regulations for Cloud Hall, which I've talked about before. It's a whole bunch of rules about how you should comport yourself. And it's interesting, too, he goes in and out of the nitpicky little nitty details and then big, wide open practice points in sort of this really fluid way. So here's her quote. The whole pure assembly should abide in the mindfulness that everyone in the study hall is each other's parent, sibling, relative, teacher, and good friend. With mutual affection, take care of each other sympathetically. If you harbor some idea that it is very difficult to encounter each other like this, nevertheless, display an expression of harmony and accommodation. Fake it till you make it, with your love for each other. So that's like surprisingly straightforward for Dogen, Understand that we're family, It does feel that way after a while, don't you think? Family. We have the joy and love of being family together. This is me, not her. We have the dysfunction of family. But luckily, we have the shared vision of practice, And so we know that there's always something to learn from when we feel good and when we feel annoyed and everything in between. Every one of these is liberative, right, So it's not just tolerating each other when we're annoyed, It's like, wow, this is a deep teaching. Maybe I'll think what it is tomorrow. Right now, I'm really pissed at you. To be realistic about the thing, But I will think about it, I'll learn. But then actually what Chimyo Roshi reflects on is her practice at Aichi Senmon Nisodo. Yeah? Yeah. I just had a little glance with Ray, who's on the screen, because she got to go there when we were in Japan. She spent a day and a half at Aichi Senmon Nisodo, which is a women's monastery in Japan, in Nagoya. So Chimyo spent, I think, a couple of years there. And here's her reflection on that time and that style of training. During my time in Aichi Senmon Nisodo in Nagoya, Japan, I shared a room with 7 other Soto nuns. 7. We don't like to have one roommate at Samish. It was so small, I slept with my feet in the closet, and the edges of our futon overlapped when we had them laid out at night, and we had to arrange ourselves face to face and head to foot to fit in the cramped space. We were the tenzoryo, the kitchen crew. Often we were the first to get up in the morning and the last to go to bed, keeping long hours to feed the monastery and our frequent visitors. By the end of a long day of kitchen work, practice, and study, we were exhausted. My futon was the farthest from the door, and so getting to the toilet in the middle of the night, I hadn't thought of that. How do you get up and pee? Getting to the toilet in the middle of the night, I had to carefully step across an obstacle course of prone bodies, doing my best not to step on a stray foot or hand. And it made me very aware of how vulnerable we all are and how trusting and how careful we have to be with each other to get through the day. Monastic training is not simply learning how to do ceremonies or studying the sutras, although these things are essential to our formation as priests. Learning to embody the compassion of these ceremonies and sutras Learning to embody the compassion these ceremonies and sutras point to is really the purpose of joining the intense environment of the monastic assembly. In the monastery, I spent almost no time alone. I was in the company of my fellow nuns 24 hours a day. We had to move in harmony in order to function, and all the activity of the monastery was focused on caring for each other, cleaning bathrooms, preparing meals, drawing baths, ringing bells for zazen. Nothing happened in those buildings that was not for the benefit of our fellow monastics. To be honest, I can barely remember the ceremonies I was taught at the monastery. I can always look them up. What has stayed with me are the memories of sliding my feet between those tender bodies in the dark, preparing a tray of cups of tea, of a sister nun helping straighten my robe. These are simple examples of the care and compassion that I believe monastics are meant to pass on to our communities and disciples as we re-enter the world. And I would say that's also what we do here, It's a little less intense, maybe. We're not sleeping here. But it's not that different, don't you think? And actually, when we were at Eiheiji, the sort of headquarters monastery of our school in Japan, I told you before, I think I got the great opportunity to sit with the monks in their morning service out on the tatami mats. And when I first sat down, I must have sat down improperly on my okesa, this outer robe. Because my host came scurrying up right away and whispered to me, "Please let me help," and tugged and straightened and tidied me up. And we normally don't like to be touched by strangers, right? Or fixed up or straightened out, right? But I just felt his love, I just felt his love. So it makes me think of what she writes here about straightening each other's robes and taking care of each other. I read other articles about, actually most of a book, about another woman who did the same thing, was in the Tenzoryo at the Nisodo, and it's intense, that's hard work. So anyway, being together is compassion and love. But it's being together with structure, right? Being together with some way to be together. Not just hanging around. Okay, that's the second part. Third part. Third aspect of Dogen's way. This one's called Be the Buddha You Are, and is written by Koon Franz, who I have met. Nice guy. And he trained in Japan too. In Japan, I heard monks often joke that, quote, the only person who ever trained the way Dogen trained was Dogen, because his monastic rules are so numerous and so precise, they're actually almost impossible to follow completely. But there's another side to it, which is the training in the spirit of Dogen is actually quite simple. It just requires an unconventional lens on what practice is about and why we do it. At the heart of Dogen's many teachings is the notion of practice verification, sometimes called practice enlightenment. It's like practice dash verification, because in Japanese it's one word, practice dash enlightenment. Essentially, this means that the fruit of what we do is precisely the thing we're doing. The fruit of what we do is the thing we're doing. In other words, you don't practice to attain enlightenment, you practice because practice is enlightenment and you are enlightenment. In his language, we don't train to become a Buddha, we train as a Buddha. In Fukazazengi, the most famous set of instructions for Zazen, sitting meditation, Dogen wrote, to practice the way single-heartedly is itself enlightenment. There is no gap between practice and enlightenment, between Zazen and daily life. Slightly different translation than ours. So here we get a glimpse of how Dogen understood, how he framed everything. Practice is enlightenment. It verifies itself, it expresses itself, it lives itself. Practice is also Zazen. Zazen is daily life. Daily life is Zazen. Everything we do, every action we take can be practice, is practice, if we understand it in this way. Enlightenment is just built in. That doesn't mean there's nothing to do. Practice means we do something. Verification means there's something to verify. Verify. The trick is to practice whatever that is in this moment, free of the idea that there's some reward, there's some other thing you're supposed to get out of this. If you visit a Soto Zen center, you'll hear people talking about just sitting. When you sit, just sit. When you bow, just bow. When you chant, just chant. Just eat, and so on. Just walk. Because in Dogen's understanding, these are not means to an end. They're not stepping stones to some future spiritual goal. They're not part of a curriculum. Everything is just this. It's expressing just this, back to being time. Everything is just as it is, exactly enough. It's complete. And we discover that completeness by taking it up wholeheartedly. You really immerse yourself in it, not just with your mind, but also with the body. It's a body practice. We meet this moment with our hands, our posture, our breath, the way we speak, the way we walk. If you understand this, wrote Dogen, you are already free. And just let me sidebar, I meant to mention something about the way we walk. So just like in the formal walking meditation, you stand very upright. If you're a sloucher like me, stand a little more upright. You put your hands together like this, forearms kind of parallel. Left hand makes a fist, right hand wraps around it. And if you really tune into the feeling of this, it actually inspires a whole certain way of being in your body as you walk. Just naturally walk a little more mindfully, maybe a little more slowly, really feeling the experience of a body moving through space. So anyway, it's nice to walk this way whenever we're in the Zen hall. So we bow to come in, and just go right to this, and just hold this posture. Get to your seat, bow to your seat, bow to the community, sit down. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. That's a nice practice to do, walking in that way. It's called shashu, and I don't quite remember what that means, that word, Japanese word. Anyway, back to Koan Franz, because he mentioned walking. So Dogen felt this way, and at the same time he's famous for dense, poetic, hard-to-understand writing, sentences and ideas that seem to turn themselves upside down, leaving us unsure which way is up and which way is down, which is beautiful and wonderfully confusing. And it's some of the most challenging writing in all of Buddhism. Some are drawn to that, but I suspect many find it to be a bit much. And that's our goal this year, to study Dogen all the time, So it might be a bit much. But underneath it is a single thought experiment that is deeply worthy. If you already are Buddha, if you already are complete, if you already are fine as you are, why would you strain to gain anything? And if that's true, how do you act? What do you do? How are you? How do you show up? How do you take care of this moment? Not in the abstract way, but in the way you move, the way you hold objects, the way you open a door, the way you greet each other. This is acting as Buddha. Buddhas already know how to do this, and you do too. So, just act like the Buddha you are. That's his conclusion. Just act like the Buddha you are. Isn't that nice? That's true with our setting stuff up in the Zendo and putting things away. Each zafu is Buddha's zafu. So it's not like plonk, 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 like it's done. It's like, thank you, Buddha. Thank you, Buddha. Thank you, Buddha. And another way you could, if you wanted to, you could read all this Buddhist stuff and just swap out the word Buddha and put in the word love. It would work out just the same, maybe better. So let's try that last paragraph doing that. Let's see what happens. Underneath this, all of these teachings is a single thought experiment. If you are already love, not striving to gain something else, how do you act? How do you take care of every moment if you are love? Not in the abstract, but in the way you move, the way you hold objects, open doors. Love knows the answer, and that means you do too. So just act like the love you are. That's pretty good, huh? But maybe from now on, whenever Dogen says Buddha, we'll just say love, and it'll be easier to understand. Maybe. Yeah. Only a Buddha and a Buddha, only love and love. 20-foot tall love. Yeah, that's better, actually. We just figured a great improvement on Dogen. Okay, last bit. And I don't know who this person is at all, actually. This is Sagan Johnson, and his part is called Awaken with All Phenomena, with all experiences, basically. Awaken with every experience. I spent a lot of time engaged with the teachings of Dogen. For years, I carried his words with me literally nearly everywhere I went. I always had a Dogen book. My spiritual practice is deeply grounded in his teachings on the harmony of difference and equality. We're just chanting about that. And how we can awaken through intimate embrace of the universal and the subjective, not as separate phenomena, but as two qualities of everything. In the earliest days of practice with Dogen, I was struck by the balance in his expression between the poetical and the pedagogical. Pedagogy meaning teaching. Teachings. Poetry and teachings. You hear his lyricism and his metaphors about the nature of phenomena, the moon in a dewdrop, the sands of the Ganges, the phenomenal expression of ash, the simplicity of a grain of rice. And then allow for unsentimental practical instructions. Here's how to sit, here's how to hold your posture, put this hand here, that leg there, this is how to organize the kitchen, and how to orient the space of the meditation hall. The lived example of Dogen points us to a fully integrated way of being. Poetry matters and details matter. Feeling oneness with all things through careful attention to every mundane aspect, to the details of life. This sense here of phenomenality, I thought it was phenomenology. He says phenomenality. The philosophy that things only exist as they are perceived by consciousness and not independently, in Dogen is poignant for me as an African-American woman, oops, I misgendered this person, who practices Zen Buddhism. So anyway, the idea that things exist as they are perceived, not in some solid, independent, external way, as Dogen points out, is poignant to me as an African-American woman who practices Zen Buddhism. Our nation's conversation about the teaching of critical race theory, for example, brings front and center Dogen's teaching that we are awakened by all beings and all phenomena. But what's missing in the conversation about critical race theory is the understanding that engaging in the legacies of slavery gives us access to the understanding of generational harm, and also reminds us of the extraordinary treasure trove of generational wisdom and healing born of suffering. So if I understood what she's saying, it's very real, the legacy of generational harm, and we got to understand that. But be open and understand that that also includes generations of wisdom, generational wisdom that emerge from suffering. The wisdom of people who are victimized in this way. And that this is actually our nation's most valuable cultural gift. It's interesting, huh? The generational wisdom from harm, systemic oppression, is our nation's cultural gift to all of us. Dogen wrote in Tenzo Kyoken, Instructions to the Cook, famous essay, quote, "Getting to eat a single grain of luling rice enables one to see the monk Guishan. Getting to supply a single grain of luling rice enables one to see the water buffalo that Guishan will become. The water buffalo eats the monk Guishan, and the monk Guishan feeds the buffalo. If you carefully inspect and exhaustively check these matters, your understanding will dawn and become clear." You clear on that? So this is like a whole bunch of koan references while also talking about being in the kitchen, cooking rice. That rice is the monk, and the monk is the rice, and the buffalo is us. These instructions invite more than just observation. While Dogen encourages us to be careful with every grain of rice, he shows us that there's much more to it than that. Dogen invites aliveness and active investigation and engagement, and to me, most importantly, he invites imagination and creativity. Recently, I was watching an episode of the Netflix series High on the Hog, which shares insights on the profound impact of African American food culture on the food landscape of the U.S. Reaching back to Africa, the show's host connects rice to the fabric of who we are today as a country. The rice I eat now holds the history of the transatlantic slave trade and the beginnings of American capitalism. The rice I am now eating has nourished the people who survived that journey and who taught their captors to cultivate this grain in unfamiliar soil. I guess rice must have gone from Asia through Africa to America or something. Or maybe it all started in Africa. So awakening for me is understanding that the brokenness and the trajectory of the stolen grains of the people is made whole through the transmission of knowledge, courage, and love. Across generations, across cultures, across time and space, Dogen's wonderful gift is in guiding us to this big awareness. I feel incredible peace, knowing that on my meditation cushion all things are possible if I allow myself to be grounded in an awareness of who I really am, and that also that I am more than who I think I am. I am earth, water, air, fire. I am you, you are me. Once we see this, we cannot unsee it, and we manifest togetherness in word and deed. We are all together. Phenomenal, which is a great double use of that word, huh? Phenomenal, because this is all about phenomena, and phenomenal, like fantastic. So that's pretty interesting connections from Dogen to critical race theory and beyond. So anyway, a few themes from Dogen as expressed by a few of our contemporary teachers. Isn't that wonderful? Everything is just absolutely this moment manifesting. And watch out for the exits, stick around, stay here, feel into it. Everything's happening right now. That being together is training in compassion. That's why we practice together. That everything. Oh, and I'm in the wrong order. Yeah. And that this is all about being the Buddha you are, aka being the love that you are. And that every phenomena is this big vision of awakening. So, what do you think of all that? Thoughts, questions, comments? Anything in that really strike you? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, right in the first essay,
Mm.
I was wondering if you could use something because it caught me,
Mm-hmm.
and that was right before the fear that something will happen in that moment of not being there with expectations or fears. So right before the fear that something will happen.
Well, I mean, it's something about being caught in what the past makes you think is happening or is going to happen. Yeah.
I found that very relevant.
If you're caught by your past experiences and expectations from the future, your exit from each moment will be narrow and unskillful. Right? Yeah.
So the exit from each moment.
Yeah. Is she says conditioned by being lost and thinking the past is predicting what's happening and that your idea of the future is, actually helpful. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, huh? Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth, for bringing that up, underlining that. Yeah.
Could you speak up a little?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Thanks. Any noticings, comments, thoughts, questions?
I like the substitution of the word love.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we should read other things like that, yeah.
I like reality.
Reality's good too, yeah. You could substitute love for reality and reality for love too, yeah. 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 Yeah, exactly. It's like the process of awakening expressing itself, right? Yeah. Which kind of gets the me out of the picture a little bit too, right? Which is nice. Because if it's like a later result, then there's a me that's making that happen, right? But if it's like, well, this is just Buddha, expressing, and I'm sitting here. Really? I'm not so sure about that. Well, that's that me, right? So there's something beyond that happening here. Yeah, so exactly. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for underlining that. Yeah. And I can post a copy of this on the talk notes too. And I do try to do that. And bless Michael Dietzel, he's very good at getting the talks up right away and very completely. And he and I even figured out how to make a YouTube channel. So we have a YouTube channel now. Yeah, woohoo! There's only 2 or 3 talks on it, but there will be more. And it's a lot easier to listen to on your phone. What's that?
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, now you can like and subscribe. Yeah, and give us 3 thumbs up and. Yeah, and we're not going to clip in a little thing that says that either. If you like this talk, help us increase our ratings. We do not care whether the algorithm serves us up. Yeah. Guys online, have anything you want to add? I'm happy to include that or not.
That's what Shashu means.
Yeah, have you ever looked at, we have a project to do this, Ray, how to unpack all these terms that we bandy about, so let's put Shashu on the list, huh? Shashu. What words those are? You don't know, huh? Yeah, without seeing the characters and looking it up, we usually don't know. So many homonyms. Yeah, Aiden.
Yeah, this is sort of unrelated, but related. Reading Dogen and seeing how he describes a lot of really intense practice situations. Like this situation of using the chair leg and just really intense, kind of like people starving themselves and only eating a very small amount of food and stuff like that. And I wonder how that relates to it seems like kind of like self-flagellation sometimes, or to me it seems like that when I have the conception that one shouldn't do like body mutilation and stuff as a way to achieve realization.
So that's confusing, you're saying, yeah. So what Aiden's saying is that sometimes Dogen admiringly cites stories of past practitioners who do really intense kind of ascetic practice, and he admires their dedication to practice. So what's that about? If it's about if you're already enlightened, why would you need to, do these intense practices, huh? Well, that's a good question. Actually, that's something we really kind of took up on the Japan trip a bit, because we got to meet a few people who had done really intense practices, and particularly the marathon monk guy that we've talked about a little bit here. And yeah, just in brief, he was a Tendai monk who did this practice that involved like a marathon length trail with lots of little ritual stops, like hundreds of them, every night for 100 days in a row for 7 years, and then this intense meditation retreat with no eating or drinking for 8 days, and all this. And the thing that really interested me about that, and I don't know if he could have really told us like the why of that, and we asked him if he ever thought of like quitting, and he was like, he didn't understand the question, kind of thing. Isn't that your impression, Mari? He was like, what?
And it seemed for me when he was talking that it was just a natural progression of his practice. Like it was nothing out of the ordinary for himself.
Yeah, and he actually said I didn't get anything out of it. Yeah, he said I'm the same. I haven't changed.
I'm
Yeah,
unchanged.
yeah.
It's like everybody else treats me different.
Yeah.
But I feel unchanged.
Yeah, but what struck me though was having gone through this intense thing. He seemed to just be completely humble about it. No pride. He didn't get any lofty position or anything. He was just this humble monk, and he's like, yeah, I did that, and now I have these new obligations, and now I'm doing this, but there's I don't know, but there's this feeling of depth, to him, and so I don't know, Aiden. There's something that happens when we do intense practice with a good heart, I guess, and he clearly had a good heart. And do we have to do that? I don't think so, and that particular branch of practice in his school of Buddhism is like a teeny little sliver. Most of them don't do that kind of thing. Turned out he's only the 51st person in history over the 800-year history of that existing, even to finish the darn thing, And so anyway, I don't know if this answers your question, but there's definitely something to structure, right? There's definitely something to structure. Do we need these incredibly intense structures? Well, maybe some people do. I don't know. Maybe some people need gentler structures. Ours is relatively gentle. What do you think, Chris?
Something I really love about Buddhism, there is a way to practice so nobody is excluded and nobody is left out. So if people want to do super intense practice, there are places that
go
do
for it.
that.
Yeah.
And for some people, Zen practice is too, they call it strict.
Yeah.
And then they find other traditions. So there's a place for all of us. And also the different Zen writings. Some people say, oh, I don't get Dogen, and some people really enjoy it, and some people want something. Some people understand better if it's explained in a dualistic manner, and there are Buddhist writers like that too.
Yeah.
So there's something for everybody.
That was nice, yeah. Okay, well, let's call that a night, unless there's something burning that wants to bubble. Yeah.
I think he was the last computer who just went straight for like one of the most painful, problematic things in our country.
Yeah.
Reverse theory. And I think the reason why I asked about suffering, and I've been kind of studying lately, is this piece where suffering kind of is the gift. It's something.
Suffering's the gift.
To wake up from.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to, but like the Tendai monk, the marathon monk said, I'm unchanged. He didn't have a choice, this is my life. Well, there are people who are enduring terrible things right now and have experienced genocide and slavery in the United States, who would say they don't want congratulations for being strong or for their ancestors being strong.
Right.
But we can appreciate that and learn from it and see it as a resource, which is what suffering is, but we don't want to put it on a pedestal. So it's like everything else with Dogen and Buddhism.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
she had a good way of saying that. Yeah,
Yeah, she went straight for it.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
In this specific Dharma position, there's a deer walking through that hole.
Yeah, that's a good point about suffering. Yeah, so to appreciate the gift of it without valorizing it, Lucky you get to suffer now. No, the people in Gaza should not be treated the way they're being treated. There's no question there, right? And yet somehow they're surviving. Amazing. Yeah. Okay, well, let's call that a wrap. So these little chants are in the book, page 4, maybe 5. May our intentions equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable, I vow to become